Hello and welcome to GoFormative number 42, Math Help. This one is about simple interest. Simple interest has a formula. Interest equals principal times rate times time. So it's important that you understand that the interest is what your money makes on your money over time. Money made from money. Money made from money over time. It could also be money that you owe borrowing money over time. Either way, there's interest. It usually is not in our favor. Usually it's us borrowing money. So when do we borrow money? We borrow money for a home because nobody's got $500,000 in their pocket. It's a big pocket. Um, so you borrow money for a home, and the bank's going to charge you interest on that. And we've had that talk. Simply put, if you borrow $400,000 at 4% interest and you pay off your house after 30 years, you would have paid like $1.5 million for your $400,000 house, which means you did pay off your house, but you also paid the bank back like over $1 million. So the bank's like, oh, yeah, sure. All these millions and millions and millions of people can borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars. Sure, as long as we get way more than that house. And that's how banks work. So, how else do we borrow money? When else do we borrow money? When we buy a car, some people can afford to go to like a used car lot and buy like a $5,000 car and pay cash. And by pay cash, you mean like write a check for it and say here, or bring 5 grand cash. Suppose that happens. But most people will borrow from the bank and borrow just a little bit of money from the bank. So if you borrow let's say you borrow $20,000. I'm going to buy a car for 20 grand and I'm going to pay that 20 grand off over 7 years. The bank's probably going to charge you close to $5,000. So you would have paid $25,000 for that $20,000 car. The bank doesn't get much back over time for a car. It's pretty low. But it is still important for you to know, okay, the bank is going to charge me money for borrowing money. That's important for you to know. Um, if you can get an interest-free loan somewhere, take it. You know what's really a bummer is student loans, right? Because all of you have this like mindset, like I'm going to college no matter what. But what you don't ever talk about is how you're going to afford college. So some people have money saved up for their kids' college. Most people, like my parents, I had to pay for it, and I'm still paying for it. So it's okay. Student loans are okay. But here's the thing: my interest on my student loan is so high, so high. I mean, I don't know, it's like 5%, but it's so high that every year I pay my student loan, I pay it down. Uh, every year it's still like the same balance. So every year I go to look at like, I thought I paid this every month. All I'm really paying is the interest, and so the balance just stays the same. So I will be paying my student loan, I think, and forever, because of the rate it's going. So that's fine. I've decided that that's okay. Um, and some of you, that's the route you're going to have to go. Borrow money, and that's okay. You got to do what you got to do. I have had car loans before. I've had home loan. Yeah, you borrow money. It's kind of unique. Like I think America is like the only place that like banks are just letting everyone borrow money. So I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty confident that nowhere else in the world can you just borrow hundreds of thousands of dollars and promise to pay it back over your course of your life. And with that, you get a car, you get school, and you get a home. So I'm not sure, but we could be the only place. We're unique like that. Um, and that's good and bad for many reasons. I won't get into that. But you need to know that interest is coming from the bank. I don't know why they make us do simple interest. It's probably just because of the equation. Okay. Um, this is a pretty simple equation because my point is this: banks don't use this formula. They use compound interest. They use a different formula. They use a better formula for them. They get more money. The formula they use helps them get more money. They're not using this formula. If they used this formula, we would all pay way less. It'd be awesome. I wish my student loans were this formula, but they're not. So it's unfortunate. So P stands for principal, not like Mr. Freeman principal, but like how much money we have starting amount. So money, this could be money in the bank, um, money that we started out with. Okay, this is the money we start with. Okay, if I'm borrowing 20 grand for a car, that goes right there. If I'm borrowing 400,000 for a house, that goes right there. If I'm borrowing 10 grand from a friend and he's charging me simple interest, boom, that goes right there. Um, So that is different. These are both money amounts, except for this is what I start with, and this is what is made from that, or the interest I owe from that. Okay. R is similar to the R we've worked with before. We did a unit on distance equals rate times time. R is still rate. That is usually a percentage, and the percentage needs to be written as a decimal. I'll just write that because you need to make sure. Okay. If it says 7%, you have to write 0.07. So super important. And the T is time. We've worked with the T before. T is time. So we've done distance equals rate times time. Now we're doing interest equals the principal times the rate times the time. So here's how this works. I'll give you 3 of them, and you have to figure out the one that's left. So grab those calculators. Let's do a couple warm-ups. If I tell you $3,500 was borrowed at 7% interest for 5 years, all you're going to do is multiply those together to get your answer. But before you jump in and start multiplying, there's a trick here. I'll highlight it. You can't multiply 3,500 times 7 times 5. You'll get the wrong answer. You have to turn 7% into its decimal, which is what? 0.07. Now, if you did this in your calculator, you will get the answer. So let's see if we can pull up the calculator. Boom. 3,500 times 0.07, that's 7%, times 5 years. So $1,225. $1,225. That is what I equals. What's that mean? I'll tell you what it means. It means this was the money that was borrowed. It was borrowed at 7%, and it was borrowed over 5 years' time. And in that 5 years, the interest on what was borrowed is $1,225. So if someone was paying that back as a loan, like let's say someone paid that off after 5 years, they wouldn't have paid 3,500. They would have paid 3,500 plus the interest they got. So you pay more. Okay. If you look at it this way, this is a made-up scenario that's never going to be true ever. But if you invest your money into a bank at 7%, that's the part that's made up. Banks are not giving us this much money. Did you know back in the day, like before I was born, in the 80s, interest rates were good. You might want to talk to somebody who was like around in the 80s, and I heard rumors that like interest rates were like 12%. So it's pretty interesting. Somebody, I think it was my stepdad. I think somebody was like, they went to college and they got student loan. They had a loan for school, and the school loan was like 6%, and they borrowed money to go to school at 6%. But then the banks were paying to like 12% or something crazy. And so my stepdad had money saved in a bank that was making 12% while he borrowed money to go to school at 6%. Well, obviously the 12% is making way more money than the 6%. So he was able to offset those charges by just keeping his money in the bank and not paying for school out of pocket. It's pretty smart, but they don't do that anymore. Banks do not give us 12%. No, they won't even give you like 2%, not even 2%, like 1%. Like seriously, it's not good. It's not good. Most banks are giving like less than 1%. So be careful when you look at that. I called the bank not the other day, but I called them and I had a conversation, and I wanted to know how much money will my money make just sitting in here? And they're like, well, up to a certain amount. So, well, if you have $15,000 in the bank, we'll give you 2% on that 15,000. And then I ask more questions like, what's that mean? What's 2%? So like, I want to know 2% per year, 2% what? And I started doing some math, and I was way off, and it wasn't even what I thought it was going to be because 2% was way high. It was like nothing. It was pennies. So, and then I talked to somebody else, and they're like, "Oh, that's actually really high." I'm like, "No, none of this is high. No, you're all high." No, this, it's fascinating. Um, they they're not given they're not giving interest to people like high interest rates. They're not handing out dollars anymore. You're basically your reward for saving is way low. So if you're looking to make money from your money, the only way I know would be like buying a home, making sure your home keeps its value or raises its value, and then sell your home for more than you bought it. Buy a car. Cars are not the best example because they just depreciate so fast. So I would never mind. Forget the car example. It's hard to do that. Hard to do that with the car. Okay, let's do another example. I go on rants about banking. I hope you enjoy that. It turns out nobody's listening to this, so that's okay. Interest. Let's go with $2,000 down. That's you putting money in a bank, and this is a fairy tale land. Okay, let's enter fairy tale land at 12%, and let's go over 10 years. So trick question. Can I just multiply these as is? Yes or no? I can't. What was the thing I had to do with this? I have to turn it into a decimal. So what's the decimal for 12%? And the answer is 0.12. Now I can multiply these in my calculator. Okay, let's do that. So 2,000 times 0.12 times, find the hidden objects. Now I really want to do this. Let's see here. Like what? Like that's hidden? No, now it's actually taking me. I don't want to find the hidden object. Times point 12 times 10 years. So that made $2,400. Okay, awesome. It's a long time. 10 years. Okay. So in this fairy tale land, you took $2,000 and you put it away for 10 years. And because the interest was so high, after 10 years, you doubled, you over doubled what you put in. So now your bank account is sitting like this, and you didn't touch it for 10 years. And it's a fairy tale land because why? Because they're not giving you 12%, okay, at all. In fact, how about we do something that's more realistic, okay? Let's say You save up $1,000 and you put it in 1.5% and you keep it there for 30 years and you promise not to touch it for 30 years at 1.5%. What was the rule about this percent and decimal? It needs to be changed. 0.015. So let's do that in our calculator. 1,000 times 0.015 times 30. $1,000 invested at 1.5% over 30 years. Look at that. $450 you made. 450 bucks. It's not a lot, is it? Think about that for a second. I mean, let's just pause and just think about that. You didn't touch your $1,000 for 30 years. How old will you be 30 years from now? You're going to be what, 42, 43? So you're 42, 43, and what do you get for not touching your money for 30 years? You get almost 500 bucks. And when you enter the adult world, you'll realize that $500 is like nothing. If you're a kid and you're 12 and 13, 500 bucks could be everything. 500 bucks will get you a lot at the Dollar Tree. 500 bucks will get you a lot of chicken McNuggets. 500 bucks, that's a lot of Dutch Brothers. 500 bucks, that's like 2 coffees at Starbucks. All right. So the reality is, in real life, you just taking your own money and putting it in a bank and letting it sit there is not going to make you a lot of money. Now, if you have a lot of money that you saved up, or let's just say for this example, you didn't just leave it there for 30 years, you added to it every year. So every year you added that, you put 1,000 in every year. Well, it's going to grow exponentially if you do that because now 1.5% grows, more every time. Is it still going to be awesome? A lot? I don't know. It's not going to be amazing, but it will be more than $500. So you can definitely do that. I always recommend, you're so young. If you just put away you could save on your own, like $100 a month. Let's just say you have a job. Okay, let me just walk you through this. I don't know what else you got to do today. I don't know. You busy? Okay. So let's just say you're 15 or 16 and you have a job now. Okay, these are all the people who get jobs. And you save $100 every month. Now, I'm assuming at your job you're going to make more than $100. So let's just say you make $700 a month or $500 a month. I'm only telling you to save 100. So $100 a month for 12 months is you saving this much per year. Okay? So if you're doing a chart, here's your age, and here's your money, your cash. Then at 15, you have saved this much, or at 16, whatever. Okay? Now you're 17, and that's doubled, right? You're doing this every year. Now you're 18, and it's at that, right? You're 19, and it's just growing. And you're 20 years old, you're in college, but it's just growing because you're just committed to going to school. I mean, $100 a month is not a lot of money. You can do that working part-time. You can go to school full-time, focus on your academics, and just have a little side job where you make a little bit of money and you're only putting away $100 a month. And then you're 21 and it's 72, and then you're 22 and it's 84, and then 96, and then 108. So we're just doing the math here. So when you graduate college, you're sitting there and you got an extra 10 grand. What are you going to do with that 10 grand? You can go put it down on a house. You could put it down on a car. What do you want to do with the 10 grand? What if you didn't touch it? What if you just kept it there? Because now you have an adult job and they pay you way more than $100. You know, your part-time job is gone. And now what if you bumped it up to $200? Since you're so used to saving, you bump it up to 200. So for the rest of your 20s, let's say, I'll map it out for you. I'm doing you a big favor, okay? Because you've never done this before in your life. All right, so let's say $200 a month. But $200 a month now is 200 times 12, which is 2,400. So you're going to add plus 2,400 every month. Okay. So now it's going to put you at what, 13,200, and then 15,600, and then 18, 24, 22,800, and then 25,200. You haven't touched it. Only $200 a month. You're 30 years old, and you have $25,000. And now, and usually what your companies do, the companies will pay you like more and more every year, right? They like to do that, especially if you just keep working. Because the cost of living, it costs more and more to live every year, anyways. If you're like, I think inflation itself is like 4 to 7% or something crazy. I don't know. And all that means is it's 4 to 7% more every year to do the same thing and to live the same way. If you're not making at least the cost of inflation every year more than what you made the previous year, then you're actually making less because your money won't be able to go as far. So everybody needs to make 4 to 7% more every single year. Otherwise, you have less. And let's just say now you're in your 30s, you're making more, and from 30 to 40 for 10 years, you're going to throw in $300 a month, which is now plus $3,600 a year. So from 31 to 40, okay? 3,600. We need the calculator, okay? So what are you at right now? You're at 25.2, 25.2, and we're going to, well, basically we can do 3,600 times 10 years, right? And then add that to 25.2. So now you're sitting there 61.2. You're at 40, 61.2. You're 40 years old. You've only put away, it was 100, then 200, then 300. Now you're like, you know what? I'm going to go $500 a month, which is $6,000 a year. It's just savings, okay? And you're going to do that until you're 50, okay? Now you're 50 years old. How much do you have? Well, $500 a month for a year is $6,000, right? $6,000 times 10 years, 60 grand. You add that back to the 61.2, 121.2. You're 50 years old, and you have $121,200 sitting in a bank this is your own bank. It's not a special bank where you invest. I'm not an investment person. I'm not able to give advice on how to put your money into a money market or do this and that. I'm just a teacher giving you realistic outlook on a very, very simple way and realistic way that you could start when you're 15 and be thankful that when you retire, you saved your own money. No matter what Social Security does, no matter what your retirement does, no matter what. In 2008, my grandpa lost $50,000 in 2008 because he's a teacher and the stock market crashed or did this thing, and he didn't do nothing. He worked his whole life. He is already retired. He's like, I worked 50 years teaching and I lost 50 grand because the stock market crashed. And he didn't have money in stocks. He didn't put money in stocks. That was his retirement that he had taken out of his paycheck and forced to be put away into a separate account that was invested by people. And when the stock market crashed, he took a hit. He lost 50 grand. So I'm just trying to give you like a realistic way where you're not going to lose at all. This is a non-lose plan, okay? So let's keep going because you're almost retired. I'm going to have you stop working at 65. So let's just say, for fun, you're 50 years old, you have $121,000, and you decide, well, I'm making the most I've ever made in my life, and I'm 50. Okay, so I'm going to now invest $1,000 a month. You know what? A lot of you might be like, what? That's not realistic. Well, think about it. If you're 50, how many bills do you have left? You don't have stacks of bills. A lot of 50-year-olds, their house payments are lower. Some of them don't even have house payments. Some people who are 50, they don't have car payments, they don't have student loans, or they don't have. So sometimes as you get older, you've paid off things, and you make more money. So you actually could afford $1,000 a month. So let's just say you put $1,000 in from 50 to 65. That's 15 years times $1,000 per month times 12 months. So we're going to put that into the calculator, okay? 15 years times 12 times 1,000. $180,000. And we're going to add back the 121 too. So now you're retired and you're sitting on $300,000. $300,000. I think it was a little more than that, right? Yeah, 301. Okay. So you're 65 years old. You have a house that you've paid off. You own all your cars. You get to retire. You probably have Social Security money. That's money that they'll give you. It's not a lot. And maybe, you know what? Honestly, I can't say for certain, but you might not have it at all, right? But you could have it. It's money that they pay people who retire. But if you don't have it, you're good, aren't you? $300,000. $300,000? That's not a lot if you have a lot of bills and you live a really high life. But $300,000 to people who don't have any bills? That can last so long. That can last you until you die, from 65 to 95. $300,000 could. Um, so I'm just saying, what a good game plan if you were able to sit through that video. Um, this all starts when you're young. The younger, the better. That's the best advice I can give you as far as investing. These questions over here, um, these aren't good at all. These aren't good questions, but you're definitely welcome to answer them. This first one is asking you what happened to the 3.5% interest rate before it went into the equation. I honestly don't even like these questions, so I'm going to trash them. Let's see this. A student loan, New Mexico Educational Assistance Foundation. Yeah, I like this one. So find the interest on the loan if you borrow. So there's your borrowing, there's your principal, there's your rate, and there's your time. And then this says right here, it says, this is how you do this. 2,000 times 8 times 1. I'm going to probably change it to, just to remove that, okay? Calculate the interest only. 1, I'll probably get rid of that too. All right, now, let's do show your work and show your work. And on both of them, I just want you to find the interest. Using the I equals PRT. Okay, copy that. Good to go. And find the interest using I equals PRT. So use the equation and plug those numbers in. Do not forget to turn that into 0.09 and that into 0.08. From there, maybe I'll throw in a couple more. Let's go with the short answer where you have to explain it. If you invest, $1,000 for 30 years with an interest rate of 12%, what will your money earn over that time? And that's actually one of the problems we did in this video at the beginning. $1,000 for 30 years, okay? And then one last question, super important that you answer this one. I'm just making it up as I go, but it's important. What did you learn about saving $100 per month when you turn 16? What did you learn about saving? Yeah, I taught a whole lesson on how you could save up to $300,000 and just try to put that in words and explain that best you can. If you forgot or can't do it, just rewatch the video and teach yourself about how to do that. Also, by the way, if you take my advice and some good investing advice about how you can get that money into something, you can actually double that. Now you have 600,000. And how you do that would be actually putting your money into something where somebody is giving you interest. My example was your money wasn't making any money. Your money was only saving that. That would be like if you just pocketed your money in your house and didn't do anything with it. But you could actually put that same theory to use with a banking system at some point and get some money made off of that money. So it's worth looking into. You're welcome.